Well, I'm sure you're wondering why you'd want to go to all the trouble of creating walls by elevation when there seem to be easier ways to make walls. Well, believe me, there's a payoff, and it has to do with openings. With this technique, we can sketch openings with splines directly on the wall surfaces. I'll draw a rectangle using auto grid mode on the outside surface of this wall. It's important that I sketch this on the outer surface because it's in the same plane as the original line that we used to create the wall. Remember, we sketched in a line, outlined it in elevation, and later extruded it to give it a thickness. In order to create the opening, we have to attach this rectangle to the wall. I'll select the wall, go to Line in the stack, and click Attach. When I select the rectangle, it becomes a subspline, and the opening is made. It's easy to manipulate the opening once it's part of the line. I'll go to the spline subobject level and select it. Now I can move it around. If I hold down the Shift key, I can make a clone of this subspline and make another opening. It's easy to change the proportion of the opening at the segment level. If you want to set the sill height, you can select the lower segments and type in a value in the Z text box down here. I'll make it 3'6". The vertex level allows very specific control. For example, I might select these two top vertices, and using the selection center, I'll scale them non-uniformly in X to bring them closer together. This makes a trapezoidal opening. Of course, if you're not happy with an opening, it's very easy to get rid of it. Just go to the spline level and delete it. I'll go back to the object level, and let's create another opening on a different wall segment. This time I'll sketch a rectangle on this wall. Oftentimes you know the sill height of the opening that you want to create. However, the rectangle that I just sketched has its pivot point in the middle of the spline. I can move the pivot point relative to the spline in Effect Pivot Only mode. I'll move it using 3D Snap with Pivot Mode and Vertex Mode selected. Then I can come over here and wiggle the mouse around until the pivot point of the spline highlights like it is right now. Then I can drag that down here and attach it to a vertex. I'll turn everything off, and now we can set the sill height exactly before we even attach the rectangle to the wall. Now I'll select the wall, select Line, and attach the rectangle. We have an opening. Of course, I can easily change things or duplicate the opening without any problem. On oblique segments, you have to approach openings in a different way. This segment was made by outlining the spline in plan first and then extruding it up. So if we sketch a spline on this particular segment, it would have to be in plan, and that's not going to be helpful to us. So you would approach this kind of segment in a different way. I'll sketch a rectangle on the surface just the same. But then I'll extrude that rectangle to make some solid geometry. And I'll extrude it back. And then I'll switch to the local reference coordinate system so that I can pull that forward so it penetrates the wall. This is in preparation for making a Boolean. Now I'll select the segment and create a compound object Boolean. That defined the wall as operand A. Now I need to pick operand B to cut the opening. Booleans often have unwanted edges like this one. But you can still modify the opening by selecting the rectangle and either changing its creation parameters or accessing it on the operand level where you can move it. One advantage of this method is although we have to use a Boolean, we don't have to nest it because we're managing all of the openings on a segment by segment level. I don't have to nest Booleans because I'm not treating all of the walls of the building as a single extrusion. So I recommend that you create your walls by elevation so that you have the maximum flexibility for creating openings.